If you're not already a Hoya lover, I hope this video convinces you because they're just amazing. So we are doing another genus care and collection type video, and I'm surprised you guys picked this. I'm really surprised that it won. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I did a community post shortly after doing my alocasia care and collection video because you guys liked it and you said you wanted me to do other genusi, and so I let you guys vote and the Hoyas won. I mean, it was a close race. Everything was pretty close by like 3 or 4%, but I was praying that anthuriums didn't win. I'm so glad they didn't win because that's like my least confident genus, and that's like my most ugly plants are anthuriums. But anyways, this is about Hoyas, and I'm glad we're here to talk about some Hoyas. So the number one thing that I feel made a huge difference, or like is the most important factor in my care of my Hoyas, is light, and lots of it. Light. It needs a lot of light. Now, that's not to say that Hoyas can't grow in medium light. They can, they just may not thrive, and you may never really get that beautiful sun stressing that you can get on some Hoyas. But I usually, when I get a new Hoya, I like to put it right up under the light and just see what it does. I've had several Hoyas for probably months and months, and they just kind of sat stagnant, but the moment I moved them to more light, they took off. So if you are struggling with some Hoyas, definitely consider the lighting and see if you can bump up the light and see if it doesn't make a difference for you. Now, the other thing that could affect the growth of Hoyas, which I feel like we can't talk about Hoyas without talking about mites. Flat mites, broad mites, whatever mites, just mites in general. I've actually had my first experience with what I believe to be mites on my Hoyas. I say believe, like I'm not sure, because it could have been like springtails, but they looked like those little tiny red dots, like how I thought mites looked from what I looked up. And so I really do think that they're mites, and I had them on a couple of my Hoya. I'm looking because I'm looking at the shelf that they're usually at. There was a couple of them that had them crawling around all over the substrate. It was disgusting. It wasn't on the leaves, so that's the only thing that I'm like, maybe it is springtails, but I saw springtails before and I thought springtails were brown and these were red. I don't know. Either way, I do have a clip that I posted on Instagram on my stories about it, because it was like it was infested in my carry-eye. It was disgusting. And so yeah, I didn't do any sulfur treatment like I know you should do, and the only reason that I didn't is because I discovered it like right before I was about to go to bed, and that was the beginning of the week, and there was just no way that anything was happening between now and then. So I haven't treated it yet. The only thing I did at that time was change the substrate. I don't see a reoccurrence yet, but I believe I had some others and some other plants which I haven't dealt with yet, but it's a thing. Unfortunately, I do not have a lot of information about how to treat them yet because, like I said, this is my first experience with them, but I have seen several videos on how to deal with them, and generally the consensus is sulfur treatments. So now that we have the not fun part of Hoyas out of the way, let's jump into the ease of Hoyas. And one major thing that I love about Hoyas is that they're so forgiving with watering, especially if you're new and you're still learning about like when and when not to water your plant. I feel like Hoyas can do well with a drying out, and they don't really throw a fit if you let them dry out. The leaves will start to get a little less plump, and they'll maybe start to show a little wrinkling, and that's a good sign for you to go ahead and water them. Of course, if you have them in semi-hydro, you just water it when the reservoir is empty, or you can let it dry all the way out and it's still happy. I usually re-water my Hoyas when the reservoir is empty. I usually do not let it dry completely out. I have a Croniana Silver that I swear, even when it's not all the way dried out, just because the reservoir is empty, that thing starts looking like a freaking prune. Some really like to stay moist, and you'll notice that some don't mind drying out. That's not to say that there's not such a thing as dry rot, where you go ahead and water a plant after it being dry for so long. It could rot, but I'm just saying that I feel that Hoyas are the least temperamental when it comes to watering. It's more forgiving. So for my Hoya, my one and only Hoya that I have in soil, I feel the leaves and I see how pliable it feels. If it feels firm, I know it's fine. If it's like easily pliable and foldable, then I go ahead and water it. That takes me to my next point about the care of Hoyas, and that is the substrate. My favorite substrate to grow Hoyas in is definitely pond, because of the small particles of pond. In my mind, it just matches the small, like fine root system of most Hoyas. I say most because I do have one Hoya in leca, and those roots are a little bit thicker and fuzzier. And then I do have another one that's in pond, but I just noticed that the roots are not as fine as some of my other Hoyas. So it seems to be like the larger, thicker leafed ones have a little bit thicker root system than the small leafed ones, but they grow well in both. On to the blooms, the most beautiful part of Hoyas. I love Hoyas for the foliage only because I don't like to be disappointed. So I do not buy Hoyas for the blooms, because if they don't bloom, I'm gonna be pissed off. So if I like the leaves, that's the Hoya I buy. I literally don't even look up what the blooms look like. But of course, I would love for my Hoyas to bloom. I just haven't experienced it yet. And the main reason, to be honest, why I want my Hoyas to bloom is because I want to be able to describe the smell. I feel like I watch people's videos when they talk about Hoyas and I'm all into it, and then they start talking about the smell and the blooms, and I'm like on the edge of my seat waiting to see how they're describing this smell of this bloom, and nothing. I feel like I have not gotten a thorough description of what blooms smell like, so I need to smell it for myself. Let me know in the comments below, do you guys feel the same way? If you have a descriptive, wordy way of describing to me the smell of the blooms, please let me know in the comments below. I would literally love to read them. And watch, when I get the opportunity to have a Hoya bloom, I'm gonna say, it smells great. So when it comes to fertilizers for Hoyas, personally, I use the same thing I use in all my plants, Jack's Houseplant Special, and that's simply because I don't like having the two different systems and doing all of that. It just seems a little complicated for me. However, if you want your Hoyas to bloom, you're definitely going to want something that is high in phosphorus, or that middle number of the NPK value, and that's usually going to aid more so in blooming. And also what's really big for that, people swear by, I should say, is foliar sprays or foliar bloom sprays, or like orchid sprays that they spray the leaves directly with, and they swear that that like makes their Hoyas bloom. Unfortunately, I do not have personal experience with such, like I said, because I don't focus on the blooms, but I would really love to have some bloom. So I think that's going to be one of my goals this summer, is to really try to get one of my Hoyas to bloom. So I say all that to say, I thought, okay, let me look at my fertilizer and see what's going on. And like I said, I use Jack's Houseplant Special, and if you notice, this middle number is double. So it, in theory, should be like really great for blooming Hoyas. However, I just read this bottle. I've read the bottle before, but clearly I didn't read it all the way through. But I just noticed on this bottle, it says like for use on, and it lists a bunch of plants. None of them are Hoyas. Probably why my Hoyas haven't bloomed. So yeah, I mentioned before, I am interested in trying out a new fertilizer. I really love Jack's Houseplant Special, but I want to try something different for my Hoyas. And because I was saying something else about, I forget what other reason why I wanted to try another fertilizer, but I really like this fertilizer, but obviously it's not what my Hoyas need. They're still growing well, probably because of the sunlight and the overall nutrients that's in that fertilizer, but that's probably why they're not blooming, because I need a different formula. One of the last things I want to mention about Hoya care is propagating, and truthfully, I feel like Hoyas are the easiest plants to propagate. I absolutely love propagating Hoyas. It's quick. I feel like they root easily. My success rate is pretty high. I don't have very many deaths of propagations by Hoyas. I've done it in water. I've done it in straight pond. I've done it in perlite. I don't think I've propagated in leca. I think that's the only thing I haven't propagated in with. I've propagated in a prop box with perlite for Hoyas, and they've all worked very, very well. I've never propagated in soil. I've never propagated in soil, period. So, but I haven't tried that. But in terms of semi-hydro, it's like the easiest thing to propagate. You can't sit here like this. You can sit on my lap, but you can't sit like that. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so, the last thing I probably should mention about Hoya care is humidity, and for me, it's a non-factor. I don't do anything to increase the humidity for my Hoyas or decrease, and they don't seem to mind. I have Hoyas in cabinets, Hoyas outside of cabinets, and they all grow pretty much the same and don't really show signs of any distress from not having enough moisture in the air. And to be honest, it makes sense because they're very thick, waxy leaves, and so it holds a lot of the moisture in there. So now I'm going to share my Hoya collection with you. It will not be my entire collection, only because less than 6 months ago I did do a Hoya collection video. So I think right now at this point I have about 20 or 21 Hoyas, and I'm only probably going to show a little less than half, maybe 9 or 10, like I said, because I already did the full collection video. So Only thing I am going to show you that you might have seen in that video is an update on a couple of those plants because they look significantly different, and then the rest are going to be all new acquisitions. All right, you're going to have to move. Yep, thank you. So I know I said I don't care about blooms, but because I do want it to be my goal to get one of my Hoyas to bloom, we are going to look at the blooms of these plants. So let me slide over, and as I show you each Hoya that I have, we will throw up on the screen some of a picture of the blooms and what they look like. And actually, let me pull it up on my computer so I know what you guys are seeing. So I'll start with two plants that I did show you guys before, maybe three actually, but they look significantly different now. And that one of them is the Hoya Burtoniae. I actually didn't realize how much this had grown until I again went back and reviewed that video before doing this one. And I think it was only full in the top of the pot here. Look at it now. It's so adorable. I love, love, love the color of this plant. I like when part of the leaves, only part of them get sun stressed and then the rest is still green. It's just the cutest thing ever. Of course, they're fuzzy, kind of velvety, firm, more like suede. I feel like it's more like a suede texture. And I like that you kind of get all different shapes. You get some shorter, rounder ones, some longer ones, some kind of taco looking ones up here. Maybe this vine is dry, I don't know, because this whole vine is kind of looking like tacos, but it's also all burgundy. So adorable. Yeah, this is definitely okay. Let me show you this tiny leaf. It's so cute. Can you see this tiny leaf there? That's how they start. Super cute. So this is the Burtoniae, and then hopefully I will have thrown up on the screen what the blooms look like. Do I have it in here? Let me see, because I was looking it up. So yes, I have up on the screen the picture of the Burtoniae blooms, and honestly guys, I've seen several Hoya blooms and this is not my favorite. I don't know if these are not, I do remember I looked for other pictures and they all kind of looked like this. I think these are not fully open. Yeah, I can tell that some of them are not fully open. It's still kind of sort of not my favorite, but you know, I'm not gonna be picky. I will be happy with any blooms on any of my Hoyas. So the next update for you guys is my Hoya Matilde. If you remember, or if you haven't remembered, maybe I'll throw it up on the screen. This, when I showed it to you a few months ago, only had these two lower leaves in the bottom here, and now look at this guy. It lives in this cabinet here, and this vine is growing up on the shelf above it. It's gone wild, but it's so cute, growing very, very well. And so that's why I wanted to show it to you, because it's such a major difference from the last time that you guys saw it. And this vine, probably within the next month, is going to be completely full, because all of these little nodes here have little baby leaves forming. So this is going to be a really cute full vine, probably looking like this one. Very cute. Love, love, love the Matilde. And as for the blooms, they are probably one of my favorite of all the ones that I've looked at, because of the little fuzzy texture that they look like they have. That is just the cutest little thing ever. So that is the Hoya Matilde. So the rest of these Hoyas are new acquisitions for me. And so this first one that I have is the Carrii Splash. I've never really been a fan of the Carrii, but when I saw this really splashy one, I was blown. So I had to get it. And I got it local from Facebook Purge or something like that. It did come to me in pond, but I took it out because it wasn't rooted, and I was nervous about rooting this thick woody. I don't know if you can see how thick and woody this is, but I was nervous about rooting that in pond, so I took it out. Thank goodness I did, because I felt the leaves were starting to get not as firm, so that stem wasn't taking up the water from the pond, even though the water level was pretty high. But I just was nervous about it, so I put it into water and it rooted very quickly in water. Then I put it back into pond and it was fine. It was growing well. It was very well rooted, and eventually put out this leaf. I wasn't worried at first, because I'm like, well, it's the first leaf. Maybe that's why it looks crazy. And then I just kept thinking about it. I'm like, well, maybe it has mites because of the way that it came out. And then it didn't put out any other growth anytime soon after. So I took a closer look, and that's when I saw a lot of creepy crawlies walking around in there. They were everywhere, all on the outside of the glass. It was disgusting. And so I immediately took it out of that and washed it down. I think at first I poured alcohol and water in it at first, and then I rinsed it down and everything, and it's been okay ever since. I haven't seen any reoccurrence of it, but it's only been about maybe 1 or 2 weeks since then that I've potted it into leca instead. And truthfully, the only reason I put it into leca is because I didn't have any more pond, or I didn't have enough clean pond, I should say. As for the blooms of this carrii, the picture that I'm showing you, I couldn't really find blooms of the carrii splash specifically, so this just says carrii. Either way, they're kind of interesting looking. It's kind of like little gumdrops on these little furry pads, but yeah, not my favorite looking Hoya blooms, but interesting nonetheless. This next Hoya is also a Mathilde, but it's a lot splashier, this one here, compared to the one that I had before. And I really love this because of the splash. I'm a little concerned though, because these last 2 leaves here don't have as much splash. So yeah, if I see that these remaining leaves down here are having less and less splash, I'm gonna have to cut it back and see what we get there. But it's continuously growing. It has 2 new leaves here, 2 there, 2 there. It's loving life. So my goal, or my plan, is to pot these together. I just think that'll be so cute. They do look different, but I do think that it'll still be really cute to have these potted together. And then for the blooms, I showed them, I think, for this one previously. Again, I didn't see a difference between the splash versus the non-splash. If I did, I'll put it on the screen, but I probably will be showing the same picture that I had before of the blooms for the Mathilde, which is that the fuzzy one? I think so. So these next couple of Hoyas were gifted to me by Saida. I really appreciate her for sending me these. So this one here is the Hoya Michelle. I have no knowledge of this Hoya. I don't know anything about it. I think I did look up a picture of the blooms. Let me see. So Michelle, oh, these are cute. Oh my God. Okay, so I just looked up the blooms for this plant and I cannot wait. Like, it is so cute, like this little double, almost triple layer flower. Like, it's the cutest. So yeah, this is the Hoya Michelle. She sent it to me in kind of this sphagnum moss perlite mix. It does have some new roots, so I'm happy about that. And oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, so I'm sorry I don't have a lot of information about this plant. It's very new to me, but you can see it's kind of that veiny, very textured Hoya with kind of like that thick barky. It always amazes me when you see little sprouts of roots coming out of this stick, because it just looks like it's completely dried up, but it's not. This thing is alive. So that's the Michelle. This next one, which I was dying to get, this Callista Phylla, also gifted to me by Saida. I was on Wish Wednesday on Plant Purge USA like every Wednesday. I'm asking and wishing for a Hoya Callista Phylla. Nobody would grant it to me, but it's okay. Saida got my back, and so she sent me a cutting of Callista Phylla. I got it just like this, 3-leaf cutting. I think she did. Did she send it to me in perlite? Maybe I put it in perlite. I can't remember. I don't recall. Either way, it's in perlite right now, just prepping it to be in a semi-hydro permanent home. And I love the Callista Phylla for obvious reasons. The veining, the super detailed veining, is a very stiff leaf plant. And I would say I haven't seen any major changes root or growth wise, but there's still some healthy roots in here. But again, very early acquisition, so I don't have much to say about it. But the blooms though are very interesting. They're like 3D. I don't know if it's this person's picture or what, but I would be hyped to see those blooms. So this next Hoya is the last one that Saida sent me, and this one has my favorite blooms. Like, if none of these plants bloom and only this one blooms, I will be satisfied. This is like the #1 plant that I want to bloom, and it's falling out of the pot. And this is the Hoya EPC 301 Black Leaves. I'm assuming it's called that because of the dark black margin that it has. Very interesting. Lulu, you sound like you're eating something that you shouldn't be eating. She likes to get into things. We have to check on her. Yeah, this one, I was having trouble with keeping this in the substrate before too. I have it clamped in here, but it wants to keep jumping out. I mean, it's taking up water because the leaves are still firm. Oh, relatively firm. But yeah, I'm gonna have to resituate this. I do remember it kind of like wanting to jump out of the pot. But anyhow, a very nicely sun stressed, this deep maroon color here, nice size leaves as well, like subtle veining, just all around interesting plant. But I'm for sure here for the blooms. Like this fade to purple on the outer petals of the blooms just look amazing. This is for sure my #1 plant that I want to bloom this year. So this next one is not looking so hot at all. It actually looks like it's dead, but it's not. And that is my Hoya Polyneura Broget. Not looking very broget or broget or whatever at all. It's looking quite dead, but it's still alive. And so what happened with this was I got it and I rooted it in water, put it into pond, and it did grow for a bit, and then for whatever reason it started to rot. Caught it and then put it into, I might have changed it to Fluval or something, I'm not sure. Either way, I attempted to reroot it. And so you can maybe see this little point here. It did have a growth point, and then eventually you see that it dried out, but then behind it, it started to try to put out another growth point, and it is still green. So I'm hopeful that it will continue to try to grow. The leaves obviously are looking struggling. They're not looking good at all, but they haven't fallen off yet, so I have hope. And I don't see new roots on the outside of the pot, but I do actually. I do see new roots. Okay. I mean, the fact that the leaves haven't fallen off tells me that something is happening here. I'm looking for mites. I don't see mites. I don't see things crawling around. I do see new roots at the top that have like grown up to the top. So prayers up. Send me some prayers on this Polyneura, because I really like the Broget. So hopefully I can get something to happen with it. I almost forgot to show you the blooms for the Polyneura, and it's there up on the screen again. Not specific to the Broget, just Polyneura in general. And I mean, it looks interesting. Not one of my favorites, but still cool nonetheless. The last and final Hoya I want to share with you guys is 100% my favorite. Like, I really love my Bertoni, but I really love this plant. Like, every day I pet this plant. And that is my Linearis. I just love this thing. It's so soft and just so, I don't know, it grows wild. Like, when I say wild, I think I only had maybe two pieces that were relatively long, and the rest were kind of just sticking up at the top. And you can kind of tell the shorter ones that they've already almost grown to the length of the longer ones, including this one here. It just got so full up here. Like, it's just amazing. I love this plant. It grows very fast, very easily. And this is one that when I got it, I don't recall what substrate it was in when I got it, but I do remember not all of the cuttings were rooted, because I think I bought a full plant, like I should say established plant, a small established plant, and then she gave me some cuttings that like at half price because she didn't have two established plants left. So half of these cuttings were not rooted, but I potted them all together in the pond and they rooted just fine, and it's now just filling out as this cute little thing. So I just love this so much. And this is what the leaves look like new when they come in. They're just kind of a little bit like lighter and a little bit softer looking when they come in, and then they expand to these nice full fluffy little things like this. Like, I just think it's so cool. I love this. I just like doing this. When it sits on the shelf, I walk by and I just pet it because it's so soft. It's very soft. It's a thirsty girl, I will say that. It's definitely a thirsty girl. It's definitely my fastest drying out Hoya, between this one and probably, I was gonna say the Bertonier, but not even. For sure, this one dries out so quickly, and it's probably because it's just exploding in growth. And it does, again, it sits, most if not all of these Hoyas sit on my shelf unless I mentioned that it's in a cabinet, and so it's under a grow light that's pretty strong. As you can see, most of them are sun stressed. So, well, most of the ones that do sun stress are sun stressed is what I should say. But yeah, and I will have thrown up on the screen the blooms. I believe they're just like kind of basic yellow blooms. I'm not like, you know, too excited about them. I'm just excited about the growth of these, which I love. It has not disappointed. Oh, this one has a crispy tip. I wonder Why? Probably because I let it dry out too much. Let me not touch the leaves. But yeah, my favorite, number one favorite Hoya, the Hoya Linearis. I'm definitely learning that I prefer my Hoyas trailing. I have one up on a trellis. I had another up on a trellis, but I always kind of eventually just take the trellis down, and I'm thinking that's what I might do with the other one as well. But I'm for sure going to look into changing the fertilizer that I use specifically for my Hoyas, because I think that's going to be the key to me getting them to bloom. But let me know in the comments below how you prefer to grow your Hoyas. Do you prefer to grow them trailing or climbing or both? Does it depend on the plant? Let me know how you're thinking, what you feel. I hope that you found this genus care and collection video helpful and enjoyable.